Hi everyone, welcome back to Clues by Sam. I hope you are doing great and you're having a great Monday starting your week. We have an easy Clues by Sam today, so very nice for those who are studying. It's a good day to kind of try it on by yourself, and then if you need any help, I'm gonna be here explaining the logic as I go. And on Mondays, we also have bonus puzzles. We play at least one of the puzzles from the newsletter that we get every Monday on our email if we subscribe to it. And I'm usually playing the hardest difficulty one from that newsletter. Today's is going to be a tricky one. And there's also a bunch more news in the newsletter. The archive is now available for people who subscribe to the puzzle. So if you're interested in that, read about it on the website, and the link to it is in the description. So I'm gonna start my puzzle right now and we shall play together. Let's start with Martin, telling us there are no innocents above him. So only criminals above Martin. And two new clues, only one. Deborah's not giving us a new clue. Isaac says that both innocents in column C are connected. So in column C, there is a second innocent. We already know about one of them. So the second person that can be an innocent because it is, or they are connected to Martin, is Sue. So she has to be an innocent, and that makes Wanda a criminal. There's only two innocents in column C. Wanda now says that only one of the two criminals above Phil is Kyle's neighbor. So above Phil, there's two people neighboring Kyle, and three people total. So if one of the criminals neighbors Kyle, then the third person has to be the second criminal, right? That makes a lot of sense to me. Now Brian says that exactly one innocent in row 3 is neighboring Linda. So we're talking about row 3. There's two people neighboring Linda in that row, and one of them is an innocent, and that's already Martin. So that makes the other one a criminal. Now we don't need Brian's clue. Kyle says there's an odd number of innocents neighboring Gary. So we know about one innocent neighboring Gary here in column B that's shared with Kyle. So that means that the last person to neighbor Gary, that's Alice, she couldn't be an innocent because that would make two innocents neighboring Gary, and that's an even number. So we know that Alice is a criminal for sure, and we don't need Kyle's clue anymore. Alice now says that two people on the edges have an innocent directly to the left of them. So we're talking about people on the edges who have other people to their left. In column A, there's nobody with a person to their left, so no one here could be one of these two people. And in column D, everybody has somebody to their left, and everybody is on the edge in column D. So there's also people in row 5 who could be innocents and have people to their left, but the thing is, two people on the edges having innocent directly to the left of them is not mentioning the identity of the people who have those innocents to their left. So one that could be one of those. How do we disambiguate that? We know that if the identity or the role of the person that is on the edge, that this is an interesting clue, first of all, because it's very complex to comprehend. So if we know that it doesn't matter the role of the person that has an innocent to their left, we are gonna have two people here on the edge who already have innocents to their left, and that's Nancy and Tyler. So we know that Wanda could not have an innocent to her left because she would be the third person in that scenario, and we know that 2 is the total. So Vince is a criminal. And nobody else on an edge has a person to their left who could be an innocent. I mean, Vance does. So we know that Umar is not an innocent either. So that makes him a criminal. He doesn't give us a new clue, but Sarah is not at risk, and not everybody here, Ellie and Joyce, are not at risk. So we don't need Alice's clue anymore. Vance says that an odd number of innocents below Brian neighbor Kyle. So there's 3 people neighboring Kyle below Brian. One of them is Phil, who gave us a clue, who was part of a clue before, and above Phil there's one innocent. So that's an odd number already. So if Phil were to be an innocent, we would have 2 innocents neighboring Kyle below Brian, and that would be an even number. So we need Phil to be a criminal, and we don't need Vance's clue anymore. Phil now says that Nancy is one of Sue's 3 innocent neighbors. So Nancy is an innocent, and we know that Sue has a third one, who's either Linda or Tyler or Zara. Phil, I guess we need Phil's clue because it's telling us about the third person. Nancy says that 2 of the 12 criminals on the edges are Ellie's neighbors. So Ellie has 1 person on the edge neighboring her who is already a criminal, and she only has 1 more person on the edge neighboring her, so that has to be the second criminal. That's Joyce. Joyce says there's only 1 criminal in row 3, so that's Kyle, which makes Linda an innocent and Habiba a criminal because they were opposites. Tag that soul. And now we know about Sue's 3 innocent neighbors, so we know that Tyler and Zara both are criminals. We don't need Phil's clue anymore. And we have a total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 criminals on the edges. So 2 more. We don't need Joyce's clue anymore. Habiba says there's an equal number of innocents in rows 1 and 5, and we know that in row 5 there is no innocents, so Ellie has to be a criminal because she's in row 1. Ellie says there are exactly 2 innocents in row 4, so we need the second one in that row. That has to be Oscar. And we also know that Gary is a criminal because we need 12 criminals on the edges. There's 14 people on the edges total. If 2 of them are already innocents, then we know that the other 14 are the people who are not those innocents. 555. Nice number. I like it. I hope my explanation was clear enough. And we shall jump into the bonus one now. So this one here, it is May 4th. May the 4th be with you. We have a tricky one as a bonus, and we're gonna reset the time just for the sake of it and start with K, telling us that both instances above Vera are connected. So K is one of the instances above Vera. That makes the 2 people who are connected to her opposites because only one of them has to be the second instant. And since we know that both means there's only 2 instances above Vera, then Cheryl is not an instant. And she gives us a new clue. Each row has at least 3 criminals. So we know that row 3 needs 3 criminal, and there's only 3 people left in that row, so everybody here is a criminal. We don't need Ivan's, flavor text, or Logan's. Julie says there's only 1 instant to the right of Uma. So there's 1 instant to the right of Uma who's either Vera or Xavi. Let's use a different color tag. And we know there has to be 3 criminals in row 5 as well. So one of them is either Vera or Xavi. There's only 2 people left in that row who could be the criminals that we need. Thor says that Kita is a criminal, so straightforward accusation. Kita says that exactly 2 of the 5 criminals neighboring Julie are in column B. So Julie is in column B and she has 2 people neighboring her in column B, so both of those have to be criminals. And Julie so far has 3 criminals neighboring her, but she has 5 total according to Kita. Frank says there are more criminals in column B than column D. So going back to Kita's school and Julie, we know that there's going to be a 4th criminal neighboring Julie here in column C, who's either Gary or Penny. So we know that Ethan and Mark are opposites as well, because only one of them has to be a criminal, so that Julie has 5 total. Frank says there are more criminals in column B than column D. So far, column D has 2 criminals. We know that Hilda has to be a criminal, right? Why is that? If Gary is an innocent, and we know that each row has to have at least 3 innocents, Ethan couldn't be an innocent, because that would make it impossible for row 2 to have 3 criminals. So if Gary is an innocent, that makes Ethan a criminal. And even like so, we would still need one more person to make 3 criminals in row 2. So Hilda has to be a criminal. And we know that column B has more criminals than column D. So we know that we couldn't have both Dana and Xavi be criminals, because then there's no way for column B to have more criminals than column D, since there's not enough people to make that. So Dana and Xavi have to be opposites. Could both of them be innocents? And if both of them are innocents, then column B would already have more criminals than column D. But then, if Bonnie is an innocent and Dana is an innocent, then row 1 doesn't have enough people to be criminals, which there needs to be at least 3 criminals in that column, in that row. So, do we know that neither Bonnie or Dana could be innocents? Would that work if Xavi is an innocent? It would if Alice is a criminal. Wood is a criminal. Is it innocent? I mean, they could have all criminals. There's nothing saying they couldn't have 4 criminals, because at least means at least 3. But 4 is more than 3, so that works. So there's both innocents. Yeah, we don't need K-School anymore. I guess, can we try making Xavier a criminal and Dana an innocent? That's the case. Bonnie and Alice both have to be criminals. But when you're unsure, just try it out. Try different scenarios out. And it will help you think things from different perspectives. So if Bonnie is an innocent, let's try that scenario. Then we know that that would make Dana an innocent and Xavier innocent, so that column D could have less criminals than column B, right? So the only way, so Bonnie being an innocent makes Dana an innocent, so Bonnie has to be a criminal, so that we don't have more innocents than we should in row 1. Does that make sense? Bonnie being an innocent makes Dana an innocent, because then there's too many criminals in column D without Dana being an innocent. So Bonnie has to be a criminal. Now Bonnie says there's an odd number of criminals in the corners. So what does that mean? There's 4 corners, right? Alice, Dana, Xavier, and Thor are in the corners. We couldn't have both Dana and Xavier be innocents, because that will make an even number of criminals in the corners. Oh, I shouldn't have dismissed Bonnie School. 2 is an even number. So, if we had Alice be an innocent, that will make Dana a criminal, because row 1 still needs 3 criminals. And because Dana is a criminal, we would make Xavier an innocent, since column D has to have less criminals than column B. And now we're in the same scenario. We have 2 criminals in the corners, and that's an even number. So we need Alice to be a criminal, and Dana and Xavier to be opposites, so that we have an odd number of criminals on the edges. Alice says that there are exactly 2 innocents in column C. So we know that there's 1 innocent in column C already, that's K. The second one is either going to be Gary or Penny, so that makes Vera for sure a criminal, which makes Xavier an innocent, which makes Dana a criminal. Nice chain. And we don't need Alice's School anymore. And now Vera says that exactly 1 innocent in row 4 is on the edge, so there's only 1 person on the edge in row 4 who could be an innocent, that's Mark. So we know that he is an innocent, which makes Ethan a criminal. And we knew that Ethan and Gary were opposites from before, so Gary has to be an innocent now. And that makes Penny a criminal. Done. Very nice. Less than 8 minutes. It felt like it took so long because I was trying to sort of make everything very clear. But yeah, I hope you get a good sense of why it's important to test out different scenarios if you're not sure. Or sometimes you have a hunch, but it's good to try it out even so, because maybe you catch yourself in the middle of it and you notice something that you haven't noticed before. So very important. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll leave you here for today and see you tomorrow for more Clues by Sam. Bye bye.